Hey guys, Chip from the Digital Grandstand here. I hope you're all having a great day. Thank you ever so much for your support of this channel, as we've recently reached over 25 subscribers and I couldn't be happier. As for today's video, let's see how Red Bull Racing's 2017 F1 season went. When the Milton Keynes team unveiled the RB13 car, the tagline used was "unlucky for some," and truer words have never been spoken. Ha ha! That's a sexy noise. But seriously, when the new for 2017 aero rules were revealed, the team on everyone's lips was Red Bull. Surely, after a few less than stellar seasons in the hybrid era, this was the year Adrian Newey and his team of aero magicians will bring the Bulls back towards the front of the field. Surely. But no, the car as a whole can only be a low for Red Bull. Most of it down to the power unit, absolutely, but even the aero package was a bit underwhelming. The most interesting and subsequently important trait of the RB13 was its ridiculous rake angle. If I am to be a nerd for a moment, the high rake basically allows a better weight transfer in the slow and medium fast corners, but it creates a bit more drag down the straights and in the fast flowing corners. It is quite an asset if done properly, so much so that the usually conservatory Ferrari adopted the high rake concept for 2017 and now Mercedes are looking into it for this year. But back to the Red Bulls. The pre-season season and Australia provided another low. They've struggled during qualifying, the race, and finally Ricciardo's retirement just rubbed more salt into the wound. I guess we'll never ever see an Aussie win his or hers home Grand Prix. The Chinese GP provided the first high for the team, as Max Verstappen put on quite a show with his drive from P16 to the podium. Couple this with a P4 courtesy of Ricciardo and that rates as a fantastic result for the Bulls. For Bahrain and Russia, another low is due. Not only they failed to bring both cars home, but also a couple of P5 finishes meant that Red Bull were now well and truly the third force in F1. Some way off Mercedes and Ferrari. The next few rounds provided such contrasting fortunes for the Red Bull drivers that it's really hard not to feel bad for Verstappen. As Daniel Ricciardo scored podium after podium after podium after podium in Spain, Monte Carlo, Canada and Austria, Max has only one P5 to show for those 4 events. So yeah, both a high and a low. And then there was the Thunderdome event. Baku. Yeah, that's the one, the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. As the hail of carbon fiber and broken suspensions went on, Verstappen's engine cried enough yet again in the early stages. Not your fault, Max, but that's another low. His teammate, meanwhile, encountered brake issues and pitted as early as lap 6 for a quick fix. He did, and that did the trick, and he was back on his way, although running towards the back of the field. His race from that moment on can only be described as special. Very special. Some overtakes from out of nowhere, a couple of high-profile incidents up front, and a controlled drive by the Aussie. The result was the highest of highs for Red Bull. Great Britain and the team gets another high, but only just. Ricciardo had a nightmare of a quali session at Silverstone and started down in 19th, but his drive from there to P5 on Sunday was spectacular. Apart from a little off moment in the early stages when he forced an overtake on Magnussen, took to the grass and fell to the back of the field. Hungary, meanwhile, equates to a low. Max had a bit of a red mist moment during the very first lap, forced the braking into turn 2, understeered his car into the sidepod of Daniel, perforating the radiator and effectively ending his teammate's race. The Dutchman's afternoon from there on was just meh, as he finished behind both Ferraris and Silver Arrows. For the next 3 rounds, it was basically back to the usual 1 high, 1 low in the Red Bull camp. While Ricciardo scored another P4 and 2 more podiums, Max registered 2 retirements through no fault of his own and 1 solitary point in Italy due to a first lap puncture after an encounter with Massa's Williams. Which brings us neatly to the final quarter of the season, one that, if anything, tried to equal the balance points-wise between Verstappen and Ricciardo. The Malaysia GP was an all-season high for Red Bull, with both racers putting on a great fight against the 2 Mercedes drivers. Max had quite a busy first few laps as he was trying to plant a move on Hamilton, which he brilliantly did on lap 4 and never looked back since. Daniel meanwhile had his own ding-dong battle with Bottas, who made a better start than the Aussie. An amazing duel ensued, but on lap 9 Ricciardo made another one of his brilliant overtakes and moved up to P3. Absolutely amazing race for the Bulls. The only downside of it was that the Ferraris were hit by reliability issues and couldn't fight at the front. Japan has to be another high for Red Bull, as the two racers ended up on the podium yet again with P2 for Max and P3 for Daniel. Not the most amazing race, if I'm honest, but a very strong showing by the Milton Keynes squad. Now, for the US Grand Prix, well, firstly it's a low, but the story goes a bit further than that. It was Ricciardo's engine who gave up the ghost this time, which was really a shame as he started in P4 and was very much in contention for another podium. Verstappen meanwhile changed some components of his power unit and had to start down in P16. His subsequent charge through the field was glorious, and any other day it would have earned him a high. Not this time though. On the very final lap of the race, Max was closing in on Raikkonen. But the young Dutchman cut turn 9, gaining a huge chunk of time on Kimi. With DRS, he closed in on the low-fueled Ferrari and made a great move into turns 16-17. But he had all 4 wheels off track, and that was the second time it happened on that lap. So 5 seconds were added to his time and Kimi rather awkwardly took to the podium instead. Mexico was just an enormous high, courtesy of Verstappen, and a ridiculous low for the other side of the garage. Max got his elbows out in the first few corners and dispatched of Hamilton and Vettel, who made some contact and went down the order hard. Once up front, the youngster never once looked like he was in trouble. A mature, controlled drive was just the perfect response after the race in Austin. Daniel's good fortune was in tatters that weekend. He replaced almost all of his power unit, started down in P16, but by lap 6 his turbo expired. Unlucky for some, indeed. For the final 2 races, the team gets one big low. They never once troubled the Mercedes and Ferraris, so they had to be content with best of the rest results. The hydraulics failure on Daniel's car in Abu Dhabi really ended Red Bull's season on a sour note. But overall, Ricciardo and Verstappen deserve a high for 2017. Almost all of their retirements were mechanical in nature, so they can't be blamed for most of them. Max Verstappen. As for the team on a whole, it has to be a low. Their prospects were so much more encouraging before the season, and what we got instead was just underwhelming. 2018 should and must be a step forward. They have arguably the best lineup in Formula 1, they have the money, they have the resources. I know they still depend on Renault to provide a decent power unit, but for the chassis and the aero package, they have no excuses this year. Thank you all so much for taking the time out of your day to watch this video, and I hope you've enjoyed it. What do you think of Red Bull in 2017 and their prospects for this year? Will we get a McLaren versus Red Bull duel? Please let me know in the comment section down below. If you've enjoyed this video, please drop a like and subscribe to this channel for more F1 related content. If you will, share this video with a racing fan that you think might enjoy it, as we will all grow this community of racing fans together. As always, I've been Chip from the Digital Grandstand. You can chat to me more directly on Facebook and Twitter, you have the links in the description. Until the next one, racing fans.